All right. I'm not actually going to wear this, just since Forrest always does. So, this is just an informal thing. We were originally planning on continuing the Scorsese series today with a stream about Goodfellas that Jacobin Dapier or Micah Utrecht was also going to join us for. Micah got busy, and we also figured out that if we waited until next Wednesday, which is when we're going to do it, then we'll also be joined by our good friend Daniel Bessner, who
that should be really fun. That should be.
It should be, yeah. Actually, apparently, I was talking to Danny about this, and apparently he grew up in like that exact neighborhood, like a bunch of like the landmarks in the movie. You know, he like we're like
he has a good tracksuit game. I've noticed every time he's on he's on any podcast, he comes in wearing the tracksuit.
Yeah, no question about it.
No, he should know some of the history because it's like it's all true. It's all true stuff. It's based on Henry Hill's book. So
yeah, wise guy. Yep. Yeah. No, that's right. Hill. I'm trying to remember when he died. It was like several years ago, I think. But but like there was a while there in like the last years when he was like giving a surprising number of interviews, and I kept thinking like, I hope he's being careful, right? Like, you know,
I think he did those lectures, like the guy in the college episode of Sopranos. I think that's kind of what it was based off of. Because I think he was going around like giving lectures for his books and interviews, and he like died. He like had a heart attack under a tree or something. There's like some like almost like cinematic story about his death. He was like sitting under a tree and keeled over.
Yeah, wow, a little bit like actually a little bit like both Don and Michael Corleone and Godfather 1 and 3. All which spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen Godfather 3. It's not a good movie, but I always thought that was the weirdest part of that movie, by the way, that I don't know when the last time as you watched it, but that it really has nothing to do with the plot, as I recall, that it's just like the plot is over, and then they do this flash forward to a much older Michael Corleone, like falling out of his chair, having a heart attack. So I was like, what, you just threw that in so we would know that like human beings, he eventually gets old and dies? Like, I don't understand the point of that.
They just came out with like a recut, like the death of Michael Corleone. Like they did like a recut third for like a third. I don't know. I think it was like excess footage they had or something, but they just released it during the quarantine at one point.
Yeah, no, I heard that. I have mixed feelings about whether to watch it, but maybe I will. Maybe we can do something on it. But
I'll watch it if we do something on it. I probably won't watch it like on my own just to.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, like I really got the sense that by the time he got to number 3, that like he's just doing. I don't know. Like it seemed like, you know, I mean, obviously Godfather, an amazing movie, that's like infinitely rewatchable. You know, Godfather 2, a lot of people think it's better. I'm not one of them, but like it's a very good movie. And Godfather 3 kind of seems like he needed the money, and like especially like if you look at the credits for that movie, it's like, oh yeah, every single person Francis Ford Coppola was like at all related to got some kind of job, you know, on Godfather 3. You know, it's like that just kind of feels like, you know,
watching Heart of Darkness last week. Like it seemed like Godfather 1 and 2 was also that he needed the money. And those are like
because he wanted to do Apocalypse Now, but I think he was still this is like a much younger version of Coppola. I think he was like really, even though it wasn't necessarily the project he would have chosen for himself, he was still like really pouring his heart into it. And 3, I didn't really get that sense. Like actually, I will say, by the way, people tuning in. So if people who are not familiar with this gentleman here, he's Forrest Miller, who's the producer for this show and multiple others. Does stuff for Weekends. And
I do stuff for both the Jacobin shows. They have a second one now on Wednesday nights that I feel like I'm supposed to be plugging. But
there's the Jacobin show, right, with Paul Prescott and who else is that? That's
Ariel Thornberry and I can't remember I'll
Jen Pan.
Yeah,
that's right. Okay. Yeah, no, fair enough. I actually have not gotten a chance to watch the first one of those yet, but it looked really good. I'm looking.
Yeah, it was definitely good.
It's on the queue for sure. And also, you were for TMBS and like I think there's other stuff too. Anyway, he's a busy guy.
I've been helping Katie Halper out with clips too, and doing a lot of that, and I should be ramping that up in 2021 when she gets her laptop and we can work on stuff better.
Nice. Yeah, I was on. So people might have seen. I was on Katie's show last night, which I'm a big fan of Katie Halper, so this is not any kind of reflection on her. She's great. But it was a strange and frustrating conversation in many ways. Maybe we can get into that.
Yeah.
But let's see.
The thing that I respect about her is that she's willing to have a bunch of people on from different sides of an argument and just kind of like, she just lets them speak, and like it's always like respectful. You know what I mean? That's kind of because there'll be like debates that she kind of sidelines herself for, like the Jimmy Dore one, and she like kind of just lets people have their opinions out there.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing for sure. Like it's good for there to be a place where people can talk about these things, and it's and yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, we can get more into the specifics maybe later, but I mean, I think it's, even though there's some things about this that I find extremely unhelpful, and we will talk about that, like I do, and like I think there are a lot of things about the way this debate is being conducted that say something about the state of the left right now. It's yeah, right. It's still good. It's still good that like in a way it's still an improvement, right? Because like at least this is the most like view from 50,000 feet, like look on the bright side way I can think of to think about it. Then in a way it's still good, because not very many months ago, like all of the debates people were having, were about like, I don't know, like what like stupid, meaningless, like symbolism, somebody was doing as like a gesture of solidarity with, anti-racism.
Yeah.
And I feel like the climate like over the summer was super duper cancelly, and not that this isn't in its own way, but like at least it's about strategy for achieving something that would actually matter, which would be Medicare for all. So like that part at least is an improvement.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a strategy debate, and it's one that I think that we should have. I don't think it's being conducted in like the healthiest way, definitely, and I don't think screaming "fuck you, AOC" at a camera is ever going to be like the way to have one of those strategy debates. It's kind of like it is kind of canceling, because it's like the I don't know, all or nothing position when it's a legitimate strategy debate. Like I think that AOC has a legitimate reason for wanting for not challenging Nancy Pelosi while there's no person to overtake her. Like I think that's a valid statement.
Yeah. I mean, I've got like, as far as what she should do, like I actually think that's like a more complicated discussion than whether this thing makes sense. But I want to come back to that in just a minute. I see somebody in the chat asks, "What's a movie you enjoy even though you think it's terrible?" And I do, and I do want to answer that. Well, Forrest is here, and then you can give me years. So I don't know that I'd go so far as to say terrible. Like, so maybe this is cheating, but a movie that I've like always enjoyed the shit out of, even though like it's you know, there are definitely some things about it that are not good, is Devil's Advocate. You remember that?
I think so. I don't know. I think I always see that movie and like on the queue, and I'm like, this isn't gonna be. This doesn't.
Yeah. So it's Keanu Reeves is playing this Southern lawyer. So that's like one of the things about it, that he has like the worst Southern accent.
Yeah. I've seen the videos where they've broken down his accent. All right, so
yeah. Of any, you know, like non-Southern actor in the history of movies, and there are many goofy and ridiculous things about that movie. But I've always found it like ridiculously fun to watch. I mean, like just like Al Pacino playing literally the devil, you know, doing this like goofy, like devil tempting people. I
think there was I think in a film class I took, like the last like seminar film class. I don't remember what they were showing us with like scripting or something, but they showed us a scene from that, and that was like one of the examples one of the professors used for like a scripting example. It might have been what not to how not to
yeah, I definitely wouldn't be surprised. So yeah, so let me cue something up for us, but what would be yours?
All right, so this isn't these movies vary a lot. Like I think that Clerks is good, but I enjoy everything Kevin Smith has made on like a comedic, like I don't know, just like it's a fun movie to watch level. But I definitely think those movies like dip like drastically with quality. Like a couple of them are really good. Like Clerks obviously is really good, and like Dogma's pretty good. But I don't know, I've enjoyed all of them, and I'm not gonna lie about that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Let me so here let's cue this up. So since you were referring to this earlier, I want to actually watch the clip. So let's do share audio. All right, so here's the I think this may have been the clip you're referring to earlier, at least this recent one I've seen.
The humanist report came out against you. Kyle Kalinske just turned on you. AOC, did you see that video? Guess who else? Crystal Ball. Guess who else? Jimmy Dore. Guess who else? Medea Benjamin. Cornell. Everybody sees through you. Everybody sees through you. Except your fucking sycophant DSA dickheads in fucking Brooklyn. We see through you. Even my detractors see through you. That's right. Everybody sees through the squad now. And why AOC? I'm telling they're pushing her out there because she's the most sympathetic. And so idiots can say, stop attacking her when she is standing between you and healthcare and protecting Nancy Pelosi and her career. Key organizing moments may look like random uprisings and viral internet moments to some, but they aren't. They are the results of years of targeting, organizing, and people's movements. Hey, this took 2 weeks. This took 2 weeks. This took 2 weeks. From someone who already went bankrupt from medical bills. It took 2 weeks. How long you been fucking working on this? I figured this out in 2 weeks, AOC. You liar, you coward, you gaslighter, you standing in the way of people in healthcare. You run on healthcare and then you deny it to us. You dangle it in front of your fucking constituents. And then when you get there, you don't lift a fucking finger. And I'm the problem? Fuck you. You already voted for the CARES Act. Fuck you. And fuck anybody who is protecting her. Fuck you. You just keep digging in deeper, eh?
Yeah. So that is what that is. By the way, it's my like that would be my candidate for I think the best, like most charitable thing you can say about Jimmy Dore in that video is it's the second worst take that I've seen from a prominent, very online leftist in the last week. Just for the record, this is the first one. So Noah Berlatsky is saying parents are tyrants, parents in a suppressive class like rich people or white people. So I think that what Noah is saying is dumber than what Jimmy said in the clip. That's that again is the most.
I thought that was sarcastic. The parents are tyrants tweet or something. Like I
would understand that. Like if you don't know who Noah Berlatsky is, like because like from a regular human being, like you think, oh yeah, like obviously, of course, that's sarcastic. Like nobody could possibly mean that. But if you read his stuff, I don't think so. Like he's pretty like for example, right? Like he wrote an essay about Chapo Trap House where he was talking about this thing that happened, actually also related to Medicare for All to tie it back in, where Amber from Chapo was doing some Medicare for All organizing thing with DSA in New York, and in the course of that, she was holding some meeting, where she was going to help people like train to canvass for Medicare for All. And it was being held in this building that apparently wasn't handicapped accessible. Now, lots of other meetings have been held in it. Nobody had ever said anything about it before, but somebody got really upset about it not being handicapped accessible. And like it was one of these things that just deteriorated like 0 to 60, the initial response was, oh, sorry, can you suggest, like something else we could do, or like maybe we could work something around this meeting, then we could have another one. And the response was like, I'm not going to do that for you, you ableist. And so Amber's response to that was to, make a somewhat Amberish joke about like how this is, you just can't give anything to people like this. Like you just have to like say like, oh, actually we support Medicare for everybody except for disabled people.
Yeah, I remember this. I think I remember this happening over the.
Yeah, and Noah wrote this essay where he was like, oh my God, so I guess the Chapo people are opposed to the rights of disabled people. It's like, oh my God, okay. This is something other than a standard human, writing this stuff. But Jimmy Dore, like in that tweet, right, like. And I think that on the one hand, right, like I think it is true that we should be able to disconnect the discussion of whether the particular tactic that he wants is a good one or a bad one from whatever we think about Jimmy Dore more generally.
Yeah.
I think that's true. Right.
Well, there's people that aren't Jimmy Dore that are making the same point. There are like Justin Jackson came on
Justin Jackson in his tweet about it was saying like, he got it from Jimmy Dore, right? Like there are like all roads lead back to Jimmy, but since he got this ball rolling, there are people who I respect a hell of a lot more than I respect Jimmy Dore who have like signed on to it, right? He listed some of them off at the beginning. Now, I also think it's kind of ridiculous, and I say this as a leftist who does stuff on YouTube. To say, oh, everybody sees through you and everybody's against you, and then like when you list off everybody, you're listing off a bunch of like left-wing podcasters.
Yeah,
like this is
like Kyle Kalinske. He listed off himself, which is kind of his.
yeah. He listed himself in third person, and that just seems like okay. You got to have a little bit more of a sense of perspective about this. The world and even the left is not delineated by like people on this list of like, and again, some of these people he lists off I really like, but like it's still like you're talking about a fraction of a like, this is YouTube is nice, right? It could be a valuable tool for education and entertainment, but like if your idea of everybody, even meaning everybody on the left, is everybody on YouTube, like get out, get some fresh air, interact with people, meet some actual activists and organizers,
Well, at this point, he just wants people to say that he's won this debate, right? Like he's listing off people that, I don't know, like, because if there were politicians that agreed with him publicly, he would have listed off them.
Yeah, of course he would have, right?
He kind of dug himself into a hole. But I don't think it's a bad strategy in the sense that if it was organized, like if they had organized it ahead of time, and they had somebody to replace Nancy Pelosi, and they had the votes in place, I think that it could be actually a pretty good strategy.
Okay, so let's get into that. And Lee Levin says something similar in super chat. Lee says Dore is an asshole. Nonetheless, his idea is a good one. Brianna Joy Gray wrote a nuanced defense of the idea in Current Affairs, like the idea, but hate Dore's presentations. This is what I was saying. Like, I do think that this is a very bad take, and I do think it's one that's like not coincidental. since Dora is a bad take machine. But also, since he originally brought it up, other, much smarter people have signed on to it, and we should be able to discuss the idea separately, right, from the guy who came up with it. I think that's absolutely true. So here's why I think that it's not like, at the very least, let's say this much, right? Like, whether it would accomplish anything, right? Like, I'm open to the idea that there's something that it would accomplish. I don't think it would accomplish what its most enthusiastic backers seem to think it would accomplish. So like an idea that's like really out there a lot. And really, like, I mean, this is not a straw man. We just watched that Jimmy Dore clip where he was saying that AOC is standing in the way of everybody having healthcare, that she dangled it out to people, and then now she's not going to do anything about it. So
you even straw man Jimmy Dore, like, he seems like he takes the most extreme position on anything he can.
Yeah.
Straw man.
Like, it would have to be quite a straw man to be more extreme than what he's actually saying.
Yeah.
But we have another opinion from Jay Desifor in a super chat. Thank you, brother, who says the only thing the previous super chat said was correct is the Dore is an asshole. Well, that's what we're talking about. So let's see if that's true. Like, so let's just take that as a given, right? That Jimmy Dore is a very stupid, very toxic, very destructive presence. His whole thing is to, like, his whole thing is that his whole thing right now is that everybody who doesn't buy into this particular tactic is a sellout. And like, that just seems like something that's actually going to be incredibly demoralizing in the long term. Cause like, really, like, you're going to tell people that one of the few actual allies that we have in those kinds of positions of power is like really secretly against us. That just doesn't seem helpful to me. And also, like, look, I mean, I'll wear my biases in my sleeve here, right? Like, I don't want to pretend I don't have a bias here. Like, I came out of, TMBS and anybody who ever watched that, right? I mean, like, has seen some pretty choice clips of Jimmy Dore over the years, defending Tulsi Gabbard's ties to the the Indian far right by saying, why should I give a shit about India? His initial reaction to Lava Jato, which was like, oh, that sounds awesome.
The guy, Ron Placone or whatever with him, that's like, oh, I hope I get a Lava Jato t-shirt.
Yeah. That's right. So I clearly do have the bias, but also, right, and so maybe that's color in this, who knows, right? Let's not rule that out. But here's why I don't have here's why I think that independently, right? Because, like, whatever, like, again, there are people on that list who I like. There are people on that list who, one or two of them who I've had on the show and will again, right? So why is it that, like, I think that those people, right? Forget Jimmy Dore for a second. Why is it that I think that those people are wrong, right? So it seems like what a lot of these people think that forcing Pelosi to do the floor vote, and by the way, this all assumes that they even could force her to do that, which frankly I'm not convinced of. I'm not actually convinced that I mean, I don't know. Like, I think that the squad, could actually do that. Like, I understand the theory that they would then convince 11 other people or something, and that would be enough if no Republicans vote for Pelosi. Although, frankly, I suspect Pelosi's response to that would probably be to cut some terrible deals for Republicans to vote for her.
Yeah.
In the general floor vote, knowing and loving Pelosi as we do, like, that seems like what she would do.
Definitely.
But like, let's assume that they could do this. They really do have this kind of leverage that they could do this. And so the floor vote actually happened. Well, what Jimmy and a lot of these other people seem to think would happen then is that this would like tell us, this would give us this definitive list of who is for it and who is against it. And then, because like, this is the thing, like, listening to that Jimmy Dore clip right now, it sure sounds like he's saying that this would pass and, we have Medicare for all. He said AOC is standing in the way of everybody getting health care. But I think even he in his calmer moments and certainly certainly people like Breonna Joy Gray and others, like they what they say is okay, of course we know this wouldn't pass, that's not the issue, but it would be clarifying because everybody would have to like take a stand because it would be on record because there would have been this vote. And I don't really buy that for a couple reasons, right? So one, if the people we're talking about are people who, like in some presentations, this like, oh, there are 118 co-sponsors, but how many of them would actually vote for it? Well, if it was a vote right now, of course, every single one of those co-sponsors would vote for it. And I'm not saying none of them are insincere. I mean, there was a point where Kamala Harris was a co-sponsor in the Senate. Yeah. You know, so I'm sure there are other people like that who are not, you know, who are bringing it, you know, who are co-sponsoring for some sort of like progressive clout, but they don't really support it. I'm sure that's true. But why would anybody who is in that situation not just vote for it in that vote? Because if they're willing to co-sponsor it, that means they're willing to have their name down as I am a supporter of this, and they're willing to do that because they think that it won't go anywhere. Well, look, if all 118 of them voted for it, it would still lose 317 to 118.
Yeah.
Right? 118 out of 435. And so everybody would know this going in. So 100% of the co-sponsors would obviously feel safe doing that. They would have nothing to lose. And if we're talking about people who are against it, like who are openly against it, right? Like the people who aren't even pretending to, people who aren't even co-sponsoring, then I don't really buy that part either. People say, oh, we'll know how to primary. It's like, I don't think that's our problem right now, that we don't know who to primary. Like it kind of seems like we know, like there are, you know, centrist Democrats by and large are pretty fucking open about their opposition to Medicare for all. I mean, Joe Biden said on the campaign trail in the general election during the pandemic that he would veto it. Like that's not a party that's shy about what it thinks about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I also think that even if you took it 100% in good faith and said, all right, like you have that list now, you're expending a whole lot of political capital to get to that point. You know what I mean? Like you're expending your leverage to get to that point. Like there's not going to be a second like Medicare for all vote that happens anytime soon. And you're kind of burning a lot of bridges to get to that point.
Yeah, and that list, right? Okay, we would have that list. I would argue that we already have a list that's about as good right now, right? Like maybe there are some fence sitters who haven't really said clearly, and also granted, those people wouldn't have to, like, you could always just skip a vote, right? Like, you know, but maybe some of those people would go on record here when they hadn't before. I guess it's possible, but I think in terms of who in the Democratic Party is at least saying they support it, and who isn't doing that, who's openly opposed to it, I think we know, right? Like, but like, also we would have the list, but as far as the rest of the world, I mean, what, like, you know, one of the points that Ryan Graham from the Intercept made about this is that this idea that this is even going to have value as theater, right? You know, is pretty dubious, right? So actually, this is a good Yoda 7104. Thank you for the super chat. Says, I genuinely don't see the win. I guess Bree has better instincts than I do, but 300 to 120 floor votes sounds like a comms nightmare in primaries to me. And that seems like, you know, that seems like the thing, right? It's that, like, if you're talking about how it would be covered, then, hey, look at this thing that, like, look at what a unrealistic idea this is. It could, like, only get like a quarter of the House. Seems like how that would be covered.
Yeah.
And then I know, like, when we were talking the Katie Halper show last night, like, Bree's response was, oh, but, you know, we can't let what we do be dictated by, like, how corporate media is spinning. Fair enough. But if you're talking about political theater, something you know isn't going to accomplish anything concretely, then for political theater, how something is going to play with the public is the whole game, right? I mean, that's it. That's what theater is.
So what I've heard people use the argument, I guess, the argument for it is that they say, well, you know, a large percentage of the population, like 65% of the population or something right now, like the general population, not politicians, like the general voters, I guess, in the Democratic Party, like a large percentage of voters in general support Medicare for all. And they'd be saying, like, I don't know. So the argument that I've heard is that they take that list somehow. I mean, I don't think it's a very good argument, but they take that list and they'd say, these people don't support the basic ideas that most people support. look at the disconnect between politicians and voters. But we already we know that, like, normal people know the disconnect between politicians and voters. I don't think that you wouldn't be changing minds all of a sudden by pointing to that list.
Yeah, like the whole, like the unstated premise in that argument is that if most voters want Medicare for all, then like we can be confident that therefore they'll punish politicians who are openly against it. But my problem with that is we've tested that theory over and over and over and over again.
Voters never punish politicians. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
Most people vote for the incumbent. Most people vote for the party that they're already registered into, and a lot of people vote for the incumbent. Like,
yeah, and even in primaries, like, look, every state that Joe Biden won on Super Tuesday, with like one exception, maybe, like exit polls said that most Democratic voters supported Medicare for all, but he still won all those states.
Yeah.
Like, it's clearly, I mean, like, I wish this weren't true. I understand why people want to believe that it's not true, but it's clearly the case that even though most people support this, most people are not ready to make it like a litmus test, even in primaries. Like even in primaries, most Democratic voters are going to continue to they're going to like it doesn't seem like most Democratic voters are going to stop voting even in primaries for politicians who oppose it. Why not? Right? That's a really good question. Why not? I think of one big piece of the puzzle is that they're not doing it because, sure, if you ask them at a poll, do you want this or not? They say, yeah, it sounds good to me, right? But they don't take it seriously as something that they think will realistically happen.
Mm-hmm. But on some level, like, why would they at this moment in time? You know what I mean? Like, knowing what happened with Bernie getting defeated by Biden, like knowing the last few years of like political theater, and knowing the fact that every president pretty much since Truman has, in one form or another, every Democratic president since Truman up until, at least up until Obama, I guess, like, ran on some form of universal health care, and it didn't pass, even with presidents claiming at least lip service to it for the last 70 years.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, I mean, again, it's not surprising that so many voters don't take it seriously, that, like, sure, they hear politicians talking about, giving everybody health care or whatever. They're, yeah, sure, sounds good, right? But they don't think it's going to happen. It's like what happened in the last general election in the UK, where, the things the Labour Party was running on, renationalizing the trains, shoring up the NHS, like, these things are actually pretty popular. Mm-hmm. Like, the thing is, I think a lot of voters, when they're confronted with what sounds to them like a Christmas wish list of things that are never going to happen, like, again, I'm not saying they should perceive it that way. Like, I mean, the whole point of my politics, try to get them to not perceive it that way, but they do. And so when they're presented with that, they think, well, okay, like, whatever, all that would be nice. My whole experience, as a British citizen teaches me that it won't happen. So I'm going to vote based on how I feel about Brexit, because that's something that feels like it's real. Like, okay, that could actually happen or not happen. Whereas, like, all this other stuff, is probably just, like, sure, politicians will talk a good game during the election, but then, then what's going to happen? And of course, I want to be clear, right? Because I think, like, some people in the chat might misunderstand what you're saying, right? It's not that you're saying, Forrest, that, like, every Democratic president supported or whatever. Clearly not, right? Like,
no, but they paid. I mean, pretty much every Democratic president up to Obama at least paid lip service to the idea that some universal health care. Like, I've been slowly listening through Reaganland, and the beginning of it with Jimmy Carter in, like, 1978. Like, one of his biggest campaign promises when he originally ran was universal health care. Like, that was one of the things that he was promising people on the campaign trail, even, like, with the neoliberalization of his politics. Like, and then, he kind of turned around and just abandoned it at one point because of the inflationary crisis. Like, it's not like it's a new idea that suddenly people are like, wow, like, this is something new that people haven't talked about. Like, Democratic presidential candidates have been talking about it since the 1940s.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I think, to be clear, I think, like, Clinton was, like, pretty openly opposed to, to do anything like that. Like, I mean, he did have, like, his push for, like, some kind of health reform, but that like Hillary Care, was much closer to what eventually happened as Obamacare.
Yeah.
But that it is actually also true that Barack Obama has said, both in and out of office, he's made some like vague noises about how he'd like, Medicare for all. Like when he was first rolling out Obamacare, he at least paid lip service to saying
that was the eventual goal, right? That was his like,
yeah, or at least that it would have been nice if we could have, right?
Yeah.
He was like, oh, if we're starting over from scratch, then of course, it'd be good to have single payer.
Yeah. I think that's the line that he used through that.
Yeah, and actually, since leaving office, he's even. I mean, it's worthless because, like, yeah, great, you waited until you weren't president anymore. Like that does us a lot of good. But since leaving office, he's even, I think, made a couple comments like, "Oh yeah, Medicare for all, that'd be good." Whatever.
The thing is, it's really safe to say that would be good. Like, it's the safest possible comment to say, like, yeah, that would be really good, and then not support it. You know what I mean? Like for a politician. Or at least for a popular former politician. You know what I mean? Like the lip service is a very safe bet, I feel like, in that sense.
Yeah, no, that's right. That seems totally right. So, and there were, and again, like, Harry Truman was certainly for it. LBJ actually might have been like somewhat serious about it. Like I actually think like LBJ might have been the last Democratic president who might have been kind of serious about maybe doing something like that.
Yeah.
That at least the claim I've seen from people who worked in his administration is that Medicare was like seen as like just the first step. That like, okay, first we could do Medicare for seniors, and then like the next step is we're going to roll out like Medicare for like kids. That they'll be like, maybe like, okay, up till the age of 25 or something.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen mostly because the war in Vietnam was costing so much and it was taking up so much political oxygen, and it just got derailed. But
I feel like LBJ kind of gave up on the electorate throughout Vietnam. You know what I mean? Like he seemed to have I don't know. I think LBJ is one of the most fascinating political figures that we've had in this country because the legitimate good that he did for our country was kind of offset by Vietnam, and then
yeah, right. I mean, like, yeah, but I mean, it's a complicated figure because in a lot of ways, domestically, honestly, I think like the social reforms that he championed as president were actually, in some ways, even more important and more transformative than the New Deal. I mean, he had. Like in some ways, like maybe the most important reforms that happened since the end of slavery, as far as civic and legal equality for Black people and creating Medicare, all that stuff. But a genocide level kill count in like this murderous imperialist war in South Asia is a hell of an asterisk.
Yeah.
Like that's like the, so there's somebody who like was like domestically like the last gasp of like that like real and like a really like not just a gasp but like a real like serious manifestation of that kind of New Deal liberalism that was that was like edging into real social democracy, but like also like he was genuinely and deeply a monster in terms of foreign policy.
I mean, it's kind of like almost like maybe not parable, but like it's like a metaphor, I guess, of social democracy at its worst. Like, what I mean? Like basic domestic progress met with like a continuation of just awful imperial policies. It's kind of the same thing was kind of going on in France, I feel like, in like the 70s and 80s when the socialists took power. But then at the same time, like we're trying to fully just continue to colonize Africa. Wow.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I know less about some of that history, but I think there's certainly lots of that in the history of European social democracy, no doubt about it. And also, like, I don't want to be reductive about this, and I'm certainly like very, very far from being a tanky, but it is also true that a lot less of that stuff would have happened if the Soviet Union hadn't existed and like had that kind of pressure to that like of that Cold War competition, like, we're going to look bad, in front of these countries that we're competing for influence in with Russia. if we continue to have racial apartheid and we don't do something for the poorest and sickest people. But oh yeah, Yoda 7104 super chat, thank you, says long thought non-backlash made boomers conservative. Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's some of that, right? I mean, like in the immediate sense, it made people certainly less right-wing about foreign policy. Like yeah, I don't know how far you are in Reagan land, Forrest, but there's in there.
I just hit 1980.
Okay, all right. You're actually further than I am. So in there, yeah, I've been listening to it very slow, like every once in a while I'm walking the dog or making digs, like dinner or whatever. Like I'll listen to a little bit of it, but it's like bits and pieces. But yeah, so you went through the whole Panama Canal thing,
yeah,
and there that like raging debate that happened about whether to sign that treaty to, in a complicated, messy way, sort of give back, the Panama Canal to Canada, which was then undone, of course, by the
with like 16 different asterisks of like, we still kind of get control over it and we can still kind of bring ships into like, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like it was very far from like the way that conservatives portrayed it, which was just like giving back the Panama Canal, which would have also been like the right thing to do. It was like, okay, there's this incredibly complicated thing, 16 asterisks to say that in some sense we'll eventually give it back, but also like here are like a million conditions.
And we probably won't continue to massacre people that like step onto the like Panamanians that step onto the canal, despite the fact it's on their land. Like,
yeah, no, for sure, exactly.
Well, it's but the broader point, like,
but no, I was just gonna say about the Panama Canal debate.
Yeah,
that like in that debate, like even like there were like grassroots Reagan kind of conservatives who were against the treaty, but there were actually even a lot of conservatives who were for that. Like William F. Buckley was for that, and there was and a lot of like raging public debate about the Panama Canal Treaty was about the fact that it had not been that many years since the end of the Vietnam War, and like the generals were saying, oh, if we don't get this treaty, we have to hold on to the canal by force. We're going to have to send all these thousands and thousands of American soldiers down to Panama, and like that freaked people out in the late 70s.
Yeah,
because the memory of Vietnam was so fresh. Like that's kind of the. I think really, I mean, that's even why in the 80s, even like Reagan, pulled out of Lebanon after the Marine barricade was blown up. Which is crazy, right? Because like that's Reagan doing exactly what right wingers always accused like Democrats of wanting to do in Iraq, cutting Iraq. But the reason, like, okay, why did Reagan do that? Well, probably he thought that he wasn't going to be able to sell the American war people on like a real serious war in Lebanon that like could start to look like Vietnam. If like the United States was being that deeply involved in the in this civil war in Lebanon. So they're willing to have this like little small like force to like keep things stable, but actually pouring a bunch of people in there, it's what right wingers called the Vietnam syndrome. This idea that people were hesitant to start new wars because they remembered how bad Vietnam was, and that's like I think that only started to get reversed with the first Gulf War. Because
there's also the flip side of it, which is like the formation of the neocons for the first time. In the wake of the Vietnam War, feeling like the failures of our policy there were so bad that like I don't know, just so freaked out, I guess, by the first defeat of the American Empire, pretty much, that they suddenly became full on hawks and were like the new, I guess, epitome of like academic conservatism. So
yeah, right. So and also I guess like should say too, I don't know, did you read Pearlstein's previous books?
Before I started Reaganland, I started with The Invisible Bridge. And I made it through that. And then I tweeted something about like, should I read Reaganland? And he tweeted at me like randomly, like he saw my tweet and started talking about. He like took umbrage with. I think he misread my tweet, and I said something about. I was like social conservatism and pseudo populism, and I think he read it as pseudo conservatism, and so he was like, "What's pseudo about it?" And we ended up having like a weird Twitter dialogue where I was talking about populism and like Reagan being for the gold standard, which is literally the opposite definition of populism. You know what I mean? Like the original definition of it, and he agreed with me. And then I was like, all right, I'll read. I'll start in on Reaganland. Because he sent me like a page from it in the tweet about Reagan and the gold standard, and I was like, all right, well, he's taking the time out, so I feel like now I need to dedicate the next like 3 months of my life to listening to this.
No, for sure. I mean, I think Perlstein, like I've read all those books. I mean, obviously, I'm going through Reaganland now, but I read all the previous ones. They're all good. They're all worthwhile. I mean, like even though as far as I can tell, like he's basically just a live in his personal politics, but he's still like a really insightful historian of conservatism. But the reason I was asking you that is because in The Invisible Bridge, right, which you read, there's that whole thing about the like weird, POW, MIA thing at the time that like it was, which was even then in the 70s, it was already successful enough, right, in terms of revising, like just blatantly revising super recent history about Vietnam, that he's got a great line in the book about how like this got to this like fever pitch of like people talking about this, that like a casual observer could be mistaken for thinking that the reason the U.S. had gone into Vietnam in the first place was to rescue American soldiers who were being kept as POWs, and since then that stuff has become even more hegemonic, like so many and this vague impression. So I guess I'm ultimately agreeing with you, about Vietnam making boomers conservative, that like in the long run, it was like, this mythology that like, well, actually, in some ways this gets us back to the door thing, because it's like a weird conservative version of the same disease, this like mythology that the reason the U.S. didn't win the war in Vietnam is that we just didn't want it hard enough. Like if we'd really gone all out, right? Like the
only thing standing in the way of us taking Vietnam.
yeah, exactly.
AOC.
Exactly. I guess what would be the equivalent, right? Richard Nixon is the only thing standing in the way of of us winning the war in Vietnam. But like lots of people really believe that, and like that's like, and certainly in American popular culture, like there's that narrative is all over the place. That's watch a lot less classy in the movies we usually talk about, but watch Rambo 2. Like that's
well,
like
it's twin crises at the same time in the 70s, because there's the post-Vietnam syndrome and the feeling of kind of like empire slipping away, which is met with like economic globalization, and you know what I mean, like the turn to neoliberalism, which for the American worker is the small thing that they've built slipping away. I mean, even if it's kind of a mythological concept, like the middle class existence that they feel like they've built for themselves, like slipping away. So that is kind of the formula for people becoming more reactionary. You know what I mean? Like it becomes a metaphor for our position in the world, that like, oh, like you can't even build a middle class life for yourself. And look, we just suffered our first major humiliating defeat in a war.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. Well, actually, have you seen the Reagan documentary on Showtime?
No.
Okay. I have mixed feelings about it. Like there are a lot of good, like it's very watchable, and like there are lots of like really interesting clips in it, and and I think like the big claims they're making about Reagan are pretty much all true. I will say that they also have like some not very interesting liberals, like kind of getting way too much screen time to say, oh, Reagan was really bad. It's like, okay, I don't know what I'm getting out of this, but one thing that they do like bring up pretty hard in that documentary is that well, as you know now, right, from Perlstein, that Trump like stole the MAGA slogan from Ronald Reagan, right? That was the Ronald Reagan 1980 slogan, "Make America Great Again."
There's a famous pin that has Reagan and Bush on it, and it says "Make America Great Again" underneath it. I used that for in 2016. I was still pretty much a shitty lib, but I was taking some media class, and I did like some presentation at the end. It was like this long final, and it ended up being like a 30-page paper that I wrote on the similarities between like the 2016 election and Reagan's election in 1980. And right before I was supposed to hand the paper in, Trump won, and I had written it as if he hadn't won, and I had to rewrite the like 30 pages of 10.
Yeah, totally fair. Look, look, I sure as hell didn't think that Trump was going to win. Like I had, like going through my old social media posts, I had like one moment of lucidity, like the day after the Michigan primary, when I was like, oh, hey, look, Bernie and Trump just won their respective primaries. This is an important swing state. Who do you think is more likely to win in the election? Since like both of the people who just won were like anti-NAFTA, populists.
Yeah.
Like who do you think is more likely to win the state? But like, I can't claim too much credit for that because like right after that, I immediately went back to, oh, of course Hillary's going to win. And like I was, I was pretty sure. The second it happened, I was like, oh shit, that makes sense, doesn't it? Right? That's like I could see exactly how that happened.
I feel like some of the thing for me is like being sheltered in like a liberal college town, which it's not like once you look underneath the surface, it's not as liberal, but like it like that kind of feeling of like, oh, like I've been here most of my life, like I go back and forth to the city, like those are really the things I've experienced, like for long periods of time, like this is what the world must be like. And then there's this feeling of, I guess, the last 4 years where it's like, nope, people are far more reactionary than than at least when that election happened that I knew they were. And it's a lot more complicated than that, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more complicated. Like, I think we want to be careful about saying like, and I'm not even saying this in any like moralistic way. I mean, I just like tactically, I think we need to be careful about inferring too much, like, okay, from like what people voted for to like what their overall, worldview is. I've been seeing a lot of that after the 2020 election. People have been saying, oh, look, people used to think, like high turnout elections, means be good for Democrats because there's this enormous pool of people out there who have like really left-wing views, but check it out. This was a super high turnout election that was pretty close, right? That there were, that obviously Biden got millions more votes than Trump, but I mean, like it was crazy high turnout on both sides. And therefore this isn't really true. And I think like my problem with that is that I think it slightly gets wrong what people are saying, or at least what they should have been saying if they thought about it, which is not that like there's some massive like, that like out of like the 100 million Americans or whatever who don't usually vote, that 80 million of them or something are like Jacobin Chapo Trap House leftists. Like clearly not, right? Like I don't think that's what anybody was saying or what they would have said if they thought about it. I think what people are saying is that, when they said, oh, like there are tons of voters that, Bernie Sanders could have appealed to and whatever, I think their point isn't that, oh, these people he would have appealed to were, that there were like people with this generally coherent left-wing worldview. I think it's just that like lots of people who don't vote normally have like, they don't have a consistent worldview at all. Like, why would you expect that? Most people don't. Like and that's not a slam on most people. That's just like, that's just most people have, jobs and families and lives, and they don't spend all their time like thinking about politics. And so it's totally fair that like most people, they have political impulses, they have political reactions to things, but they haven't really thought about it enough for those impulses and reactionaries to gel together into a coherent worldview. So the point is not that like, oh, these are people, the people that we thought Bernie would appeal to are dyed-in-the-wool leftists who would never vote for Trump. The point is that like, look, lots of people have lots of like complicated, messy, oftentimes totally incoherent views, and you could appeal to a lot of those people with a program that like appeal to their bread and butter interests. Like it's not a guaranteed thing for all the reasons we were talking about earlier in the stream, that like lots of people don't take that stuff seriously, but like that is a way you could appeal to people. There are lots of people who might, maybe they're a little bit racist. Maybe they're, maybe like they have some like bad or reactionary views about some subjects, but if you can do the hard thing, which is getting them to take seriously that no, they really will get healthcare if you vote for them, then they might vote for you anyway. And like maybe even, the way this stuff often works, I think with political psychology, a lot of people end up like identifying with the candidates that they vote for and like the people who they see as their allies in that struggle. And like maybe some of their bad views would get better over time. Like the same way that like, people in like if you've ever seen like Mattawan, right? That movie that in Mattawan, there's like a nice, accurate portrayal of this coal strike in West Virginia in the 1920s, where you have lots of coal workers, who maybe had some, some racist or reactionary attitudes, but like over the course of this like bitter strike where they're fighting alongside, workers of other races and ethnicities, like, it's not a magic bullet, but like it, I think solidarity actually does help people get over a lot of that stuff.
Well, Jane McAlevey talks about that a lot, who does the organization stuff. She talks about how it's not that it's some kind of magic bullet or something like that, but when you organize with people, all of a sudden kind of desperate groups of people who might have some pretty reactionary ideas, or, because people get upset about their workplace or people get upset about certain things. But when you train people, I guess, to look at who's actually causing them those problems, like, you know what I mean? It's people at the top fucking them over, and they start to have some kind of solidarity between workers. But we're living in a society where most corporations also know that. And part of the reason that, that part of their union busting is making people feel separate. And you can't like, think that doesn't have an impact on people's overall.
Oh yeah, totally.
Well,
and look, it works in both directions too. That like that a lot of these places, like in West Virginia or whatever, that used to be union, dominated by these unionized coal mines, and people would get their political cues, from their unions, and a lot of these places have like really gone in the other direction since they started to leave.
Well, I think I've made this point a bunch of times lately, and I'm going to keep making it because I think it's really important for the left to understand this. When the platform stops being about things that you can immediately get to improve your situation, when it becomes too separate, supposedly opposite, but not opposite parties that are not offering you anything as an individual, it becomes about social issues. It becomes about cultural issues. And the truth is that most people have some reactionary views, like not in the sense of like, oh, they're bad people or morally let's judge them. But the second, like, you know what I mean? Like that's like the second that you take people's material conditions away from politics, they're politics, because a lot of people are going to vote for somebody. They're far more likely to listen to a story where, somebody's taking something from them, or their worldview is more represented, or with the Rick Perlstein stuff, like, you know what I mean? Like church, abortion, like those issues speak to people far more once you take away anything that will materially improve their situation.
Yeah, 100%, no question. That there are people who are gonna, because look, I mean, people, and this is the point, that people have lots of different views, which means that lots of different candidates could appeal to them in different situations, or with different pitches, so it's not that, again, the point is not that there's some huge mass of people who agree with Bernie about everything. The point, right, what we say that Bernie could have reached out to some of these voters, who voted for Trump or didn't vote, is that there are lots of voters who agree with Bernie about some of the bread and butter material things. And even if they disagree with him about some social issues, they might be willing to vote for him anyway, despite that disagreement, because
I don't think a lot of people honestly wouldn't give a fuck about it. Bernie's opinion on social issues, if they felt like legitimately their material lives would improve. I don't know. I think people go the way of when it comes to politicians, they kind of go the way that the wind is turning. Because there's plenty of people that I know that decided to vote for Trump in upstate New York, and then all of a sudden they're parroting back. All of a sudden they're joining, I don't know. And I think this goes with neoliberalization and taking community out of things. So all of a sudden things like Facebook are the community that people have, rather than unions, rather than these social organizations, and that's on purpose. But all of a sudden everything's tailored to people's so-called interests. So somebody votes for Trump, and the next thing you know, they're in, which is a reason that the Rick Perlstein book's been so interesting. All of a sudden people are in these conservative Facebook groups or something, conservative meme groups, and they're parroting back slogans that have been around since the 1970s or 1980s that you can literally read about in the Rick Perlstein books. But they've never thought about the history of it. They don't understand the history of it. They're just kind of going along with the wave of something that they've decided is something that they're identifying with.
Nice. So Mr. Antonio, who, by the way, I should say is one of the best human beings alive because he's a GTAA patron, says in a super chat, you guys would like the book Make My Day, Movie Culture in the Age of Reagan. Does sound like something I'd be interested in. I have
Yeah, me
certainly
too.
read. What do you think of the defining films of the Obama and Trump eras? That's a good question. Yeah, might have to chew on that. I don't. I'm trying to think. Yeah, what are the defining films? Like, I don't know, like the Trump era. Like Donald Trump is still president for like another few weeks. It might be a little early to say about like the
Yeah.
Trump era, but yeah, what are the defining films of the Obama era?
One thing I always thought was interesting was that I'm pretty sure it wasn't American Sniper, at least released as wasn't that in 2014?
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, not that that's a defining film because I don't think anybody really fucking watched that besides like
somebody in chat says that the defining movie of the Trump era is Borat 2, which I can see, but no, I mean I don't know. Actually, like so here's a serious answer. Like, and this is gonna sound like a little goofy, but I kind of think it's true that like the defining movies of the Obama era were all of those like mediocre Marvel superhero movies.
Yeah.
Like and I think that it's very like actually like I think in a lot of ways like those like said like a lot about like the Obama era zeitgeist, because you know, like those were in some ways like culturally and in terms of representation and like empowerment for women and all that stuff, those were like pretty woke movies. But like on the other hand, it was all about you know, it was all like so much of those movies are about like, well, look, I mean, in some cases, you know, Iron Man, I mean, Jesus, Iron Man, like the hero, you know, is this, you know, is like this weapons contractor, you know, rich guy, and in some, I guess that was like still just barely, you know, Bush, maybe. I'm not sure. I might be getting my chronology mixed up there, but like,
I think it was 2008 or
yeah. So it was as Obama was being elected. And you know, certainly, you know, but certainly some of those, like, you know, like what was it, like the Ms. Marvel, you know, Miss Marvel movie, like that's I mean, that was just like a straight up celebration, you know, of the U.S. military. Like I understand, like it was bad. The military was like, you know, it was portrayed in this very Obama-y way that like the problem with the military is that back in the day it was sexist, but like, you know, now we're fixing that, so it's awesome.
Girl power, dropping bombs.
Yeah, exactly.
Bombs.
Yeah.
I think one of the most interesting Marvel movies is Captain America: Civil War or whatever, the one where they're pretty much like, because they really do like pretty much commit like a human rights atrocity in Age of Ultron, and they're like dealing with the fallout from that the entire thing and like debating whether or not to like just say fuck you to the UN. And kind of just continue doing what they're doing. And
so this is the thing, right? Like this is my whole problem with Captain America: Civil War, that the all right, it's been too long since I watched. I'm going to mess up some of the names here, but like the way it was portrayed was like, and I think this actually says a lot, like in a weird way, is that you know, so they had the there's this superhero registration. It was like the something Accords. I don't even remember what that was called.
I think it's like the Slovenia Accords or something. It was named after the city that they had destroyed.
Yeah. So it was like it was like some Eastern European city that those Accords. So like the way that was portrayed was like
Sokovia Accords.
Was that?
Sokovia Accords.
Sokovia Accords, that's it. Now I remember. So like the way that was portrayed was Captain America, by the way, also a total you know, that whole character is nothing but a celebration, you know, of the US military. But that so this conflict with you know Iron Man and Captain America about the Sokovia Accords. It's all about like this is like the stand-in for like civil liberties and authoritarianism, and so like Captain America is standing up for civil liberties against authoritarianism. But like then I always thought, well, wait a second, you know, take a step back here. Sokovia Accords are a really good idea, like absolutely something that should exist. Or like I remember in the originals there was the Superhero Registration Act, which was kind of the same thing. You know, it's like, yeah, of course right? Like, so what you're talking about is that he had like what you're essentially talking about is whether vigilantes should be just be able to use violence like on their own, or whether they should be accountable to like some sort of public institution. And like once you start thinking about it that way, it's like Captain America, who we're supposed to be rooting for, when he was like, well, what if what if the UN doesn't want us to go in somewhere, but we know we need to? It's like, look, he could all over North justifying Iran-Contra, like, oh, you can't have like Congress like getting in the way of these things. He could be like a police union official explaining why we shouldn't have a civilian review board, and it would be exactly the same argument.
Well, it's kind of like Colin Powell during the Bush years, standing up in front of Congress during Iraq and pretty much saying like we have the unitary authority to go into wherever we want. Like, we're obviously the good guys. We're America. Like, you guys, like, the rest of the world doesn't really matter. We don't actually have any, like, the UN doesn't actually have any authority over us. Yeah. It's the same kind of military thing. But the thing that I found interesting about that movie, like in a way, is it's kind of pitting the in the same way they did kind of with Carter's fake human rights thing. Like, it's pitting like the concept of like legal human rights against like the gut level moral good. Like, obviously, if the Avengers go in somewhere, they're the morally good ones, and all of these rules are just kind of going to get in their way. And like, you know what I mean? It's like it's well-meaning, but like they're the ones that are morally good. They're the ones that are right in that situation. Even when they're wrong, they did it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Which would be damned at that point.
Yeah, no, for sure. Although, actually, I guess that's interesting. So, thinking more about that, I saw somebody in chat mentioning that TV show, The Boys, which might tell us in a way a little bit something about the Trump era, because not like Trump, but like some of the larger forces that led to him. So, like actually in a good way, because some of that's about like the reaction to like all of that, like war on terror stuff. That like both.
Yeah, but it says a lot about the actual politics underlying The Boys, like TV series, that the villain in the third season is going to be clearly based off AOC. I mean, Amazon produced it. Amazon, you know what I mean? It's from Amazon. Like, the villain in the third season of The Boys is going to be like their AOC stand-in.
Awesome. Yeah, so I definitely didn't watch that far. That's interesting.
Yeah, they show it in like the last couple seconds of the second season. So sorry for.
That is okay. I did. Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched like. I mean, randomly, I actually did like read like the first volume or two of like the source material, like way the hell back when. And I wasn't that into it, but I watched a bunch of episodes. I guess it would have all just been the first season of The Boys.
Yeah.
I
didn't read The Boys, but I read through Preacher, and I love Preacher.
No, Preacher was fantastic.
Yeah.
Garth Ennis, that's the guy, right? Yeah. Like Garth Ennis, like I loved Preacher, but every time I've ever tried to read any of his other stuff, I've always been a little disappointed by it. Like, I think, like I mean, in some ways, it's a little bit weird to say that like he was like a one-hit wonder, because Preacher was like 15 volumes or something, but like I don't know, like I haven't really seen him, like anything I've read by him, at least maybe people can tell me what to read, but anything I've read by him, he doesn't really replicate like what was, because I think part of the problem is with with Garth Ennis is that like Preacher like had like actually like compelling characters and emotional stakes and all of that stuff, and it also had this like really goofy over the top violence going on in it.
Yeah.
And like, but the combination worked really well. And then I think that like I get the sense that Ennis learned all the wrong lessons for the success of Preacher. He was like, oh, I guess people like the goofy over the top violence, so I just need to do like a lot more of that.
Well, his thing with The Boys is kind of on a way more, I guess, harder to come up with topic. He was really pissed off about, or really, really annoyed by the sheer amount of work going into Marvel and DC comics. That was like he fucking hated superhero comics. So he decided to create like the most anti-superhero comic ever written. So like looking at it that light, it seems like a more interesting experiment than it is a
no, for sure. Like I said, the first volume or two I read, like I wasn't that into, but like when I watched, and I didn't like even watch it on purpose. I was just I was just hanging out with a friend at a place where we happened to be on TV, so we watched like 5 episodes in a row or something.
Yeah.
But like the show I liked a lot better, than the original. Maybe I would have liked the original if I'd read more of it. But again, like I mean that is interesting about the AOC thing. I wouldn't have expected that, but it was like in the early stuff, it actually like, which is interesting because like in like the early stuff I was watching, like and maybe this is actually also says something about the Trump era, right? Because it's like the early. Like the super early stuff almost seems like halfway leftist, in what it's saying about all this.
Mm-hmm.
But then I guess it could. Oh, actually, sorry. So that's a good point. Somebody in the chat mentioned Parasite. That's an interesting option for like a I mean, obviously it's not an American movie, but still as like one of the big as a movie that tells us something about like where the culture's at in the age of Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I think it says more about our kind of latent global left pushback to things going on in the age of Trump than it does about kind of the age of Trump.
Yeah. No, for sure, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, like it's in the same. But I mean, look, I mean, you can even say some of the same stuff. Like a lot of Reagan era movies were about like people in like collapsing neighborhoods who are like fighting off like greedy developers, who are trying to, to buy up everything, so, and like in a weird way that was both, right? It was like, cause it was like, it had a little bit of that like Reaganite sort of, nostalgia for like when America was better or whatever. But like, it was also reacting against like rich people running rampant and doing whatever they wanted, in the Reagan era.
Yeah. One interesting thing on that point is that I think you saw the series of tweets. J. Andrew World is trying to make a podcast with me where we watched like a lot of those bad 80s movies during the Reagan era, and we like talk about the politics of it. So that I think that could be a really interesting podcast idea. Because I think there's a lot there, like
yeah.
And I think that kind of like there's a combination there in a lot of like films between like obviously there's like the consumerism of it, but then there's also kind of like the whole Cold War aspect of like ramping up the Cold War propaganda.
Yeah, no, fair enough. There's a lot of that. Yeah, I have a if you do the podcast, like have me on whenever you want to do an episode about 80s time travel movies, because I've got a whole thing about this. But Back to the Future and the first Terminator movies, like I think there's like something like weirdly interesting about the way that those are like in both cases, both of those movies, the reason that you're traveling back in time is to like protect your mother. Right, like that's like that. Like there's something really weird about that.
Return to the family.
Yeah, exactly. This is disconnected, but it's as good a time as any to ask. So I've been, since we've been doing these movie streams, I think it'd be interesting. Like I think it would be fun, right? I guess to do. We've obviously got the Scorsese series going, which we should see through. But on a completely different note, I kind of want to do like a John Carpenter series.
Oh, that would be fun. That would be, yeah. I think that would probably take us in a whole different direction than kind of the like Scorsese like history mob / executive style like movie series that we were kind of talking about.
Yeah. No, for sure. It would be a very different thing, but I think it's also a thing we should do, and maybe we could get Eileen Jones to come on for some of that. So she wrote an article I just checked. It is online, and it's also in the new print issue of Jacobin called John Carpenter Apocalyptic.
This here issue.
Yeah. That's right. The Dead Bird issue.
I moved into this new apartment, and the roommate like my new roommate had Jacobin on the table when I walked in.
Nice.
I was like, all right, like I'm,
Yeah. Good roommate. Yeah, I told I just free association, but whatever. It's a live stream. I'll like one of the images that I'm always going to like treasure most from well, not this year. Was it this year? Anyway, the years get mixed up, right? So it was either late 2019, early 2020. When did Lula get out of prison in Brazil?
I think late 2019, because I remember we did the Philly live show in November, and then we sent that message to Sao Paulo, like everyone holding up the Lula Libre, and I think that was like right before he got out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so
it might have been December 2019.
Yeah, no. Yeah, like I think that's about the latest. It couldn't have been much later than that, because I remember in when was the last Brooklyn live show? That was February sometime.
Yeah, February, the beginning of February.
Yeah, and because I'm remembering, actually, I might be getting mixed up here, because it was as somebody says in the chat, 2019 was about 5 years ago. That's what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
But it was either the weekend of the last Brooklyn live show, or it was like a random weekend in January, like one or the other of those. Because like I remember I was in, both of those weekends. Right, there was a weekend in January when I was in Brooklyn, because my wife and I had moved to Georgia, and like we'd left a bunch of our stuff with a friend in New Jersey. So like I kind of came back on the way back from seeing my family in Michigan, came back to New Jersey, picked up our stuff, and while I was there, like I spent a couple nights with crashing with Michael and his girlfriend Theodora in Brooklyn, and it might have been then, although it might have been the weekend of the Brooklyn show, because I was staying with him then too. Like one of the other, I remember he was like gearing up to go. To go down to Brazil. So I guess it was probably the one in January, because he, I think that was in January.
Yeah, he went to Brazil in January, and I remember that because I was in Puerto Rico the week before he was in Brazil.
Yeah.
So I was texting him from Puerto Rico, and he's like, "I'm on a plane to Brazil."
Yeah, because that's right. No, it was definitely January, because I remember in January he was like on the phone with like some people in Brazil who were like setting up the interview, and he was like super excited about it. And then I remember when I was back there in February, I was back crashing on his couch the weekend of the live show, and he had at that point like a framed photo in his apartment of him and Lula. But I was just thinking about it because we were talking about the Jacobin thing, and I was remembering right after Lula got out of prison, there was a picture of like those pictures going around of Lula like the day after he got out or something, like reading this print issue of Jacobin.
Yeah.
And it made me so happy because I mean, not that they were in this print issue, so I have no reason to think that Lula's read them, but like two of the Jacobin pieces I've written were about him. There was one co-Michael in the primary called Lula has called to, or Bernie has called to free Lula. Why won't the rest of the Democratic field? And there was one, and actually my very first article ever in Jacobin was about Lula, because it was it was kind of a weird article. It was like something that I just thought like, it was like an analogy that had occurred to me, and I was talking to Bhaskar about it. He was like, "Oh, that sounds good. You should write that up as an article." And it was this comparison of Lava Jato to Deflategate. That was the first thing I ever had in Jacobin. But seeing, but anyway, having written a couple of articles, about the prosecution of Lula and his imprisonment in Jacobin, it made me really happy to. To see him read the magazine.
Yeah, I remember Jacobin like posting that somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I should. So, and actually, by the way, that is what, like, that is part of what, when I said earlier, I admitted to having, like a bias against Jimmy Dore, that I might be coloring my thoughts about this. Although, God, I really, really think that he had that. Like I really think there are objectively good arguments against this idea that he has now, that it would play out the way that he thinks it does. And certainly, I think that, like, going on about how like, there's this like specific half-baked idea that you have for this like parliamentary procedural maneuver, and like therefore like AOC is a fucking sellout, because she's not going along with it, like what, and everybody.
Well, the irony of it is, I think that the half-baked like Nancy Pelosi parliamentary that's kind of her style of politics, isn't it? Like these weird like last minute like Hail Mary, I don't know, like that isn't going to work. It's like Wile E. Coyote stuff. But like I don't, like the irony is that that's kind of what she's pioneered as Speaker of the House, isn't it? Like
no, for sure, right? Like, and it's such like, and I guess so. So here's the thing, right? Because I know some people in the chat earlier saying, look, there's all this energy around it, so like obviously we need like energy. It could not be more important, to get Medicare for all right now. I mean, the middle of pandemic, Jesus, like it's obviously, very urgent issue. It should be, I mean, I absolutely agree, it should be on the top of our priority list. And so isn't it good that people are excited about something that has to do with Medicare for all? And I get that argument, right? That makes sense. But here's why I'm not entirely persuaded by it, because it's good to have energy and an excitement related to Medicare for all. And I hope that some of this, when it doesn't happen, can be translated into other things that might be more effective, and that we can find other things to do with that energy. But like also it's energy that's about Medicare for all, but it's directed internally. It's not directed at the people who are actually standing in the way of Medicare for all. Your Pelosi's, your Schumer's, like a lot of it's about Pelosi, but like really, like it's being directed at like AOC and congressional progressives. And I think and so that's one thing. It's like, this is not about being nice or being civil or anything else like that. It's like, I mean, look, let's dip into, everybody's favorite Nazi philosopher, and, it's, Carl Schmitt, right? Politics is about friends and enemies, but like, you got to be clear on which one's which. And like, it's not a good strategy to get, like, just like it's not a good strategy to treat your enemies as your friends. And I absolutely think there are legitimate criticisms of AOC for like not, for not at certain junctures, like differentiating herself enough from Pelosi and the Democratic leadership. But it's also not a good idea to treat your friends like your enemies. Like, neither of those make sense to me. And also it's not like, so that's one thing, that like so much of it.
I always felt like AOC is kind of the beginning of something and not like the final form of it. You know what I mean? Like when the left takes power, like there's going to have to be people that are way more to the left of AOC and way more competent about strategy. But I've always felt like it's a good thing that there is an AOC right now that's establishment friendly enough that, other people are going to be able to slip in through the door behind her.
It's not a super chat or anything, but it's it's too good not to read. Darwin 42 in chat says the Chad Schmidt and the Virgin Heidegger, as far as the best Nazi philosophers. But yeah, look, AOC has some bad votes, although also I think some people's memories are very short about this. Bernie had some pretty bad votes too, right? I mean, like it's not like the evaluation of these people is more about like what's their overall direction and like, what are like the main things that they're standing for, not about whether, if we're just going to like morally evaluate votes, I've got some, there are some votes that, there's some votes that Bernie did that I have a big problem with too. Like in some ways, like though, since she is like one or really like part of three, out of 435 people in the Congress, my bigger problem is about yeah, look, I think some of the Pelosi stuff, and like this is actually good because this does get a little into the question of, okay, what should she do, right? Like if you don't buy this, like what's plan B? And I think that one thing I've been saying all along, right, since all this started, is that even though I don't really buy this particular like plan, like I don't think that she really has this leverage, right? I don't think it would work. So I don't think they'd actually get the floor vote. I also think that if they did get the floor vote, I don't think it would accomplish the things that Jimmy Dore and other people, like Brown and Joy Gray, think it would. And I also think that like if anything, like it probably wouldn't get very much coverage anyway, because like something is defeated 3-1 and there's no suspense. I don't know how much coverage that's going to get, but whatever coverage it got, I don't know that it would actually be that. Like again, I think that like the story would be, oh look, it couldn't even get like it couldn't even get up to like half the like barely got a quarter of the votes in the House. This is so pathetic. Now let's focus on things that are more realistic, which could be a really bad.
To be fair, even if it got close to winning and lost, I think that the story would be spun as, look, this isn't something that can win. You know what I mean?
I think that's true. Like, I think that's totally true, right? Like, absolutely. It would be spun that way. No question. Like corporate media are not our friends. Like they would absolutely spin it that way. Mm-hmm. But like, I also think that sometimes we're a little too quick on the left to sort of use that as like a reason not to think about how things are going to play out. Cause it's like, yeah, of course, like our ideological enemies are going to, present some narrative that like makes us look bad no matter what we do, but we also don't need to make it easy for them, right? Like some of those narratives are going to be a lot more persuasive to persuadable people than other ones. So look, I think all that stuff, but does that mean that AOC should vote for Pelosi for speakership? Absolutely not. I think that it would be, I actually think that like, forget like some sort of like, 9-dimensional chess parliamentary maneuver, she's going to use this as leverage to get this other thing, and that thing won't do anything, but like somehow it'll help, in the long run, whatever. Forget all that. Just say like, look, should AOC just like refuse to vote for Pelosi because Pelosi sucks? And I think, yeah, maybe, right? Like, because Pelosi certainly does suck, and just sending that signal of not voting for her, like, I understand your argument about this, which we can get to, which, does give me, pause, but I also think there is something to be said for just sending that message that like, oh, we're not on the same team, like to help clarify to people who only sort of pay attention to politics that like AOC isn't just like a slightly more extreme version of like a liberal like Pelosi is, that like these are like really opposed factions.
And one thing that that conservatives have been pretty good about with their messaging is putting AOC and Pelosi always next to each other in things as if they are the same, as if their agenda is the same, and it's not. But like I do think that there's definitely a plus in differentiation.
Yeah. So I mean, like the danger, of course, is what you were talking about earlier, that it would be that if Pelosi was actually defeated as speaker, which I don't think she would be in this scenario, but whatever, like if Pelosi was actually defeated as speaker, then like we get somebody who's even worse. And yeah, I think that's like also a legitimate concern, but like, yeah, there is some, there's some value in differentiation. And look, I think you can generally criticize, like, I think if you want to criticize AOC for like being like way too conciliatory sometimes to the Democratic leadership, sure, right? I mean, I agree. Mm-hmm. I mean, that like some of everybody always quotes the like mama bear thing. There are like a few things like that. Like there are definitely some comments she's made I don't like, and I think that like in general there is a larger issue there, which is are like social democrats within the Democratic caucus. Are they going to act like junior partners in a coalition where like obviously they have like a different long-term agenda, but they basically get along with their senior partners? Or are they going to act in a way that's more oppositional and confrontational? And I think it should be the second one. Mm-hmm. Now, I also think like what you just said about how AOC is the beginning of something, that it also makes sense right now that like the gravitational pull of that junior partner approach is like overwhelming because there are remember, brass tacks, there are 4 people in the squad and one of them kind of doesn't count. Like, like that's Ayanna Presley, like didn't even endorse Bernie. Right?
There's also a slightly larger, I guess, like progressive caucus that could be utilized for something if they had organization behind them. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
there are people in Congress that are more progressive that if we got to a point where, you know, they were pushed enough, might come up on our side in a lot of these issues. But I don't think that. I mean, I think it's on purpose because I think a lot of those people are comfortable with Nancy Pelosi as Speaker, and I think in some ways AOC and the squad is comfortable with Nancy Pelosi as Speaker for now. I don't think that they're necessarily going to turn on her, but at the same time, I think there's going to like come a time where they have to. The thing is that they didn't line up somebody to replace her, and I understand why. Like, it's a pandemic, and I don't think that right now they're worried about like a leadership struggle because, you know, we're literally in the middle of an awful pandemic. At the same time, it's more important than ever to get Medicare for all because we are in the middle of a pandemic.
No, that's the thing. I mean, I think this would totally be the time to do a leadership struggle if, like, but the thing is, I mean, I guess this is like a thing, you know, like, you know, Michael Albert, he's a anarchist thinker, you know, and economics guy. Like he was involved in like Z magazine and stuff like that. He's like, he's one of the main like participatory economics people. But anyway, he, you know, actually he's going to be on the show in third week of January. But he has like a really good rant somewhere where about that you can find on YouTube, where he's like talking about how much he hates the phrase "fighting the good fight." You know, like it's like, well, you know, like what the fuck is the point of fighting the good fight if you're not going to win, right? Like just fighting isn't anything, right? You know, it's the winning that matters. You know,
it's kind of one of those liberal defeatist phrases that
exactly,
from decades of impotence.
Exactly. So it's like really like what you should, like now would be a perfect time for a leadership struggle if there was some chance of success. Right, of like actually like getting in somebody who is some sort of like, you know, progressive or social democrat or Jesus, at least better than Pelosi, which isn't a very high bar. Like now would be the perfect time for it. The question is just like, you know, I mean, if you're going to do it, you should either be doing it because you think you're going to win, or at least you might win, right? You hope to win, or if not that, then because you think that you're going to like at least get something out of it on the level of theater, that you're going to like, you know, that you're going to like, you know, convince people of something, or you're going to like send some kind of message. And I think that if you were talking about like, if you could get to a point where like, let's say like all of those like 118 people who are left enough that they'll at least say they're for Medicare for all, that they're co-sponsors. Like if you could get to a point where like all 118 of those people, you know, we're going to vote against Pelosi as Speaker, then totally you should do that. Because if it was like
it could be an incredibly dramatic leadership coup if they had it organized ahead of time. Like that could be honest, like one of the, you know what I mean, like one of the most dramatic moments in congressional history, at least recent congressional history, if they had planned it out and they had somebody to replace her.
Yeah, like, and again, like, yeah, if you could actually do that, you should totally do that. And also, for that matter, even if you were going to fail, like if, you know, even if it was going to fail, if it was still like 100 people voting against her to vote for somebody more progressive, that would still, I think, be worth doing, because it would be like like at least that would be like a big dramatic gesture, like in a way that like I think like the door people think that doing this floor vote on Medicare for all would be, but like I don't think it really would be, because like I think it like Natalie Scher was saying the other night in Katie's show, it would be like they'd probably allow like 15 minutes of floor debate, and then like they'd have a quick vote and it would be quashed, and you know, whatever, like that's not anything, right? But
kind of like what Mitch McConnell did with the Green New Deal at that one point, like where they kind of just let it up for a random vote and people abstained from it, and you know what I mean, like it kind of crushed the idea for a second that
because he did the vote like in order to embarrass Democrats, be like, oh. And of course, actually, that's like also like I think it's interesting to think about how that's similar or different from the Medicare for All thing, because that Green New Deal vote, like in a way, McConnell's strategy is what like Doar and Gray and all these people are saying their strategy is, which is that it's they want to put people on record. Now in that case, it's for the opposite reason, that they want to like put like Democrats on record as support. It's like what they see as this crazy extreme environmentalism. Because they think that'll hurt them in elections. But also, like, the reason that makes sense is because, like, most congressional Democrats or Senate Democrats, I guess, in that case, right, hadn't really, they hadn't really expressed a view on it because like, why would they want to touch that, right? Like, they, like they're
and it was like what, like 2 months after they originally released the papers on it, like.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So that's why McConnell thought that he could like really embarrass Democrats by having that vote, because it would like force them to do it. But like Medicare for All is like one of the very biggest issues in, certainly the 2016 primaries, certainly all of the big primaries that happened in 2018, certainly the 2020 primaries. Yeah. Like everybody has expressed an opinion about Medicare for All. Mm-hmm. Like you can't not, like it's
some cases changed their opinion on Medicare for All 3 times. Like
some people have expressed a lot of opinions on Medicare for All depending on how the winds were blowing at that time. So it really seems like the effect, like the effect of doing that, like that made more sense, that you could put people on record that way, whereas it seems like everybody's already on record. And this idea, again, like I know this is repetitive, but this idea that, the voters will punish people for voting against Medicare for All. It's like, I mean, I would understand how somebody could believe that if we hadn't just gone through an election where the guy like Joe Biden, who's like one of the only major Democratic candidates who didn't try to like fudge or triangulate or have it both ways on that issue. He didn't do any kind of Medicare for All who want it bullshit.
Yeah. He just said, I'm not for it.
Yeah, I'm not for it. And he won the primaries. Even though most Democratic voters supported Medicare for All, he still won the primaries. And even though he said in the general election that he would veto it, most people, I mean, look, he got fewer, there were fewer like third-party voters in 2020 than were in 2016 by a lot. Like nobody, and I understand that, right? Like, and I'm not blaming anybody for making that decision. I made that decision, because I live in a swing state, and and it's like unfortunately you have to make a choice about like the options that are put in front of you, not the ones that you wish they were. But the point is just that the evidence is not there for the idea that voters are going to punish politicians for coming out against Medicare for All. Like it just hasn't happened. I don't know why
it didn't even punish politicians really for the like financial crisis in 2008. Like, you know what I mean? Like we don't have like a like, even because that's something that, all right, like it's something that people want that affects their material conditions in this case. So like logically speaking, or I don't know, rationally speaking, you can say, all right, well, they're going to punish somebody who doesn't want to vote for their material interest. That's not how people's politics work. But
no.
But even in a case where there's massive like fraud and saving companies that are corporations and bankers that, you know what I mean? Like things that really hurt people lost on their houses. Like voters still didn't punish politicians for that.
No, they didn't, like at all. Like really, like even in the 2016 election, when Hillary Clinton was running for president, like the fact that so much of the banking deregulation that led to the creation of these too big to fail super banks that were in that position to act that way. Like that was barely, like the fact that all that happened during the Clinton administration was barely an issue when Hillary Clinton was running for president. And that was only like, actually it was barely even, like that was only that was only 8 years after the crash that was so recent, and it was barely a thing. No, I mean, it does show, absolutely. Somebody in chat said something about direct democracy for sure. Right. I mean, like that's, I mean, that would be, and actually I should say too, to try to be constructive about this, because a lot of the problem, of course, is that there are these politicians who are corporatists or who are in various ways not responsive to public pressure about this. We're making these decisions rather than voters just getting to vote on them themselves. But that said, there is one like silver lining here, and I know it's like not enough of a silver lining. It's very frustrating that this is the kind of thing we can point to at this point as a silver lining, because we're in such a desperate situation now. People need healthcare so badly. But there is one way in the American system that we do get a little bit of direct democracy, and that's with state level ballot resolutions. And this ties in. So Abdul Al-Sayed, who was he was like the Bernie-crat who was running for governor of Michigan in 2018, and he wrote a like he's written some stuff for Current Affairs about Medicare for All, and he had like a really good detailed plan for, he was going to call it like Wolverine Care or something, for like a state level version of something like Medicare for All in Michigan. And what I've thought since then is like, okay, I mean, obviously it's a terrible thing, that Abdul didn't win that race for governor, but there's no reason that people couldn't do that as a ballot resolution, right? Like, I don't think so, right? And there have been things not quite like that, right? But there have been things somewhat like that have been like Medicaid expansion in Idaho, which was it was 2018, because actually I remember, because at that conference in Boise, the Jordan Peterson thing, that after it was over, like Michael hooked up with his friend Luke Mayville to go like campaign door to door. For that.
I like that picture of him at the door of somebody trying to explain Medicaid expansion.
Yeah,
I enjoyed when Luke Mayville comes on TMBS, and they showed like the Reclaim Idaho like documentary, like part of it.
Yeah, right. And that passed. Like Medicaid expansion passed in Idaho, which is a deeply conservative state. So I think that, I mean, it would be very difficult, I think, to have like full on state level Medicare for all, because I think you couldn't, like, my guess is you probably couldn't ban private insurance companies from operating your state, or that'd be a problem with the Interstate Commerce Clause. Although I'd love to like force people to actually test that in court, but even if not, right? I mean, you could at least have like, ballot resolution to have a state level plan to, to have that, Wolverine Care, I don't know what they call it in New York, but like whatever, right? Like New York Care.
It would definitely be something like that.
Like there's no reason you couldn't have this ballot resolution to at least give New York Care. Like, look, we could just say, all right, maybe we can't ban like duplicative insurance, but at least we can have at least every single person who lives in New York can automatically be sent a New York Care health insurance card in the mail for free. And, and they can use that, and, maybe we can even force everybody to accept it. Or worst case scenario, it would at least be like Medicaid for all, that it would be that Medicaid, which the problem, like lots of doctors won't take it, but lots of them do, right? Like, and it's not as good as Medicare for all, but, God damn it would be something.
The thing that kind of sucks about New York specifically is that, Cuomo kind of runs it like a Tammany Hall style, because we don't get very many ballot resolutions. Like, it's not like California or something where they take that as like a sacrosanct right that if you want to put something on the ballot, you can. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. The thing though, talking about
in the chat, by the way, somebody one suggestion was Big Apple Care, but then my favorite one that came up in the chat was Pizza Rat Care.
Isn't that Pete Buttigieg's Pizza Rat care for all who want it. But a perfect example of what we were talking about earlier with punishing politicians. Like, not only did Cuomo not expand Medicaid during this pandemic, I mean, people are kind of covered if they're already on it, but he's going to slash the number of people who are allowed on Medicaid because he says the budget can't keep up with it. And I guarantee you, at the end of this pandemic, in a couple of years when he's up for re-election, he's not going to be punished at the polls for that.
Oh, totally. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
He won an Emmy, for God's sake.
Yeah. I mean, he was exactly right. He became this like liberal, COVID hero because he gave press conferences where he sounded calmer than Trump. Like, that's basically what he did. Even though he also like forced the nursing homes to like have like people with COVID there.
Yeah.
And even though he's trying to cut Medicaid and all of this stuff. But
a perfect Cuomo bit would be like, and he kind of is doing this in real life, but like since getting that Emmy, like if he turned himself into like more of like a dramatic like actor, like screaming from their trailer every Corona briefing now, like he just leaned into it.
Nice. Yeah, but look, I mean, I think that some of this stuff, like when Eric Levitz was on right after the election, he was talking about this, that I mean, like, it's kind of funny to say, right? But I mean, it's like, I think like at this point might have to like lean on federalism for some of this stuff. Like he uses this phrase like states' rights progressivism, that we could like do like some of these reforms on a state level, which again, I mean, it's better than nothing. But as far as like, I guess like this is my take on like the larger issue. Somebody in chat says Cuomo Care is just a rich suburbanite yelling at you to take responsibility for your own future.
You didn't wear a mask. Exactly. All right, that'll be $1,200. We don't cover that.
Exactly. But yeah, look. I mean, as far as like, what's the like alternative thing that you can do, for Medicare for all? Because like this is the big thing. Like, all right, so like I don't like the door thing, both because like I don't think that this specific like parliamentary maneuver would like work the way he thinks it would, but also because I think it's insane and extremely counterproductive and like toxic and destructive to like scream that people are fucking sellouts because they're not going along with like
fucking sellouts.
Your specific idea.
I think a good faith version of Jimmy Dore's argument would have been not to go on a YouTube show and scream this into a camera. It would have been to talk to like strategic and comms people for like ahead of time for progressive candidates and pitch this. And I mean, for Jimmy Dore, it's all about, how many people are watching his show, but like a good faith version of this would have been to pitch this to them, not on like a.
I mean, I'm not against going on YouTube and like criticizing, even the best politicians. Clearly, right?
I'm specifically speaking about this strategy.
Yeah, no. I gotcha. Like, but like also, also the thing that bothers me about it is the theory of change. That like, do you think that like the reason we don't have the things that we want is because of like what's in like some politician's heart, right? Or is it about the balance of forces, in society, the political terrain, and like this kind of gets down to. And I think it's like a dangerous thing to tell people that like it's all about like whether some politician has good intentions or they're a sellout, that like, because if we're going to achieve these things, like what it takes is organization at the bottom of society for, like that the like working class, like both being organized non-electorally and also like that movement finding expression electorally. And when I say finding expression, I don't mean having like, 4 people in a squad, right? But like, that we could actually like take power. And which is the thing, that like, it's not like, I don't think we can leverage our way to getting centrists to do good things. This is also my objection to like the Breonna Joy Gray stuff about elections.
Yeah.
That like that all assumes, right, like both the sort of nice conciliatory left liberal version that, oh, we'll pressure Biden, and like the superficially more like the tougher version, like the sort of Brianna Joy Gray, Virgil Texas, oh, we'll play hardball to have leverage against them. Both of those strategies are basically the same. Like they're different from each other. They're versions of the same thing, but they are versions of the same thing because both of those say that basically the way that we get what we want is by somehow getting centrist politicians to do it for us. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, like those guys are just the enemy. And we can make decisions about which enemy we'd rather be fighting and all this stuff, right? But like but basically the only way we're going to, like the reason why I don't have Medicare for all, the reason we have Medicare for all certainly isn't AOC, right? Like there's the reason that we don't have Medicare, and it's not that like, oh, people haven't tried.
It's time traveling AOC.
Yeah. It's certainly not that we haven't tried like one particular trick to get there. The reason that we don't have Medicare for all is that most people who are in elected office who would be in a position to control that are against it. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? And so then you say, oh, what are you doing? Which, like it took me a while to like I figure this out, because this is something when I started like expressing doubts about the Jimmy Dore stuff, I started getting this all the time. It's like, well, why are you shitting on what he's doing? What are you doing? What's your idea? And of course, in some ways, like, okay, what am I doing? It's like, well, I mean, first of all, I should say, for all honesty, right, to total cards on the table, a hell of a lot less than tons of other people are, right? I'm basically somebody who writes things and talks on YouTube and in podcasts, right? Like there are people who are like organizers who work for like National Nurses United, and this is like all they do is fight for Medicare for all. Yeah. And I'm certainly not one of those people. But that said, okay, look, what have I done for Medicare for all? Well, I have consistently donated to and campaigned for politicians who support it. I flew to Las Vegas, to canvass for Bernie before the Nevada primary. I've done debates with people about Medicare for all. I've done a shitload of content, responding to like right-wing anti-Medicare for all stuff. But then like when you start listing all this off, people kind of like, say, yeah, that's not what I mean. Right. Like, cause what they mean is, what are you going to do that's going to get us Medicare for all right now? And the hard truth is nothing. But there's nothing like that anybody could do right now, like other than having like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden and like, whatever, like whoever, like whatever, Mitch McConnell, right? Like having all these people like magically have change of hearts, like nothing that anybody's going to do right now is going to get us Medicare for all. We're not going to get Medicare for all like in the next 2 years. That's not happening. But that doesn't mean that we should give up on it. And it doesn't mean like the way people like always straw man this is, oh, so you're saying this isn't the right time to push for Medicare for all. It's like, no, fuck you. Of course we should be pushing for Medicare for all the time. We just need to have we just need to be real about what's going to get us there, right? That like we need to.
And the truth is that there's no giant coup that you can just come out of nowhere and take the reins of power. Like building power is a long-term organizational strategy when it comes.
Yeah, exactly. And also like, we're not coming at this out of nowhere. Like it's not like, oh, this is the first thing anybody's ever come up with to try to push Medicare for all.
Jimmy Dore thinks it is.
Yeah, I know he thinks it is.
Well, he said in 2 weeks.
Exactly. Yeah. It only took. You're saying it's really hard and we have to do all this long-term organized. Well, it only took me 2 weeks to do this. It's like, what's this? Right? What's this, motherfucker? This is that you got a bunch of like people who watch left media, like really angry at like a leftist congresswoman. That's it. That's the whole this. Right? There's no this beyond that. Like there's no this that involved getting even one single further congressional vote for Medicare for all that there wasn't before. There's no this that's like there's no this that like somehow like contributed to like more like grassroots organizing for it or founded a new organization or anything like that, right? This is just that like you got everybody to talk about you on Twitter all week, right? Like that's it. That's the this. And so like this is not the first thing that somebody's done try to push for Medicare for all. That this is, somebody in chat says this was writing the rant. You know, like
it only took me 2 weeks to write this rant.
That's right. Yeah, but like, yes, of like, what are some things like the fact that we're even in that position for Jimmy Dore to say, "Oh, look, there are 118 co-sponsors for Medicare for All. There are all these polls say that most people support it. Now, what are we going to do?" That itself is a sign that this movement for Medicare for All, it's slow, it's agonizingly painfully slow sometimes, you know, but like it has actually like been coming along, right? Like we went from in 2015 out of 535 people in the House and Senate, I'm pretty sure the only one who was really talking about Medicare for All was Bernie Sanders. Like that was it. Like, you know, maybe there were like a couple of other, you know, I don't know, maybe Tammy Duckworth or somebody like, but like basically it was him. Yeah. Like, you know, I mean, I'm sure that like the total list of people who were like really who had any kind of like pro Medicare for All position, I'd be shocked if it was more than like 10 people in 2015. Now there are 118 co-sponsors.
Well, it was John Conyers had written the
John Conyers. That's true.
He had, like every
good call. Yeah. No, John Conyers is an interesting guy. He actually, I went to way back in the day. I went to this like summit that he organized of like anti-war activists in Michigan. Like he's a like he's done. I mean, whatever. Like he's obviously, you know, pretty flawed person. You know, given how he ended up leaving office, but like also, it didn't surprise me that Rashida Tlaib was then elected in the same district that had elected him all those years. Let's put it that way. But yeah, so that's true. There's John Conyers, there's Bernie Sanders, like there were a few people, but like, you know, the fact that we've gone from like hardly anybody was talking about this, like that Conyers Medicare for All bill, like was such a tiny little footnote, you know, in that whole healthcare debate.
Yeah.
Like to the fact that this is such a big issue is a result of all of this organizing, which, you know, I should say, I mean, maybe I shouldn't bite the hand that feeds me here, you know, because like it's not in my interest for people to think that YouTube and podcasts aren't important, but like, you know, it's you know, but like that didn't primarily happen because of people talking on YouTube or podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Like that happened because of these electoral campaigns, some of them conducted by like the least online people who've ever lived, like Bernie Sanders, and it happened because of all of this on the ground organizing by groups like, you know, the nurses unions and, you know, all these people who've been pushing for it, you know, increasingly successfully. Like they've certainly won the argument for public opinion for now. I know that can go away, but like they've won the argument for public opinion. You have a bunch of politicians who've been elected talking about it, and like who that's like really one of their big things, like AOC or like Rashida Tlaib or these people. You've got over 100 congressmen. I'm sure some of them aren't sincere, but you know, they're at least willing to say that they support it. Like that itself is a huge movement victory. That like if you have people who are opportunists who at least have an incentive, right, to say that they agree with you, you know, like that's a sign that something is going right. It's just a very like it's a slow process, and ultimately, yeah. Like, I understand why he's frustrated, right? We've been talking about this forever and nothing ever ends up happening. But it's like, yeah, like right now there's 118 people, which is like a quantum leap forward from where we were a few years ago.
Yeah.
But that's out of 435, you know, like right now the numbers aren't there yet. Like that, you know, that they're the only way we're ever going to get Medicare for All is to like win a shit ton of elections against centrists, so that we actually have a majority that can vote for it, and then have like enough of a grassroots movement that's powerful enough that we can pressure like fence sitters, you know, to support it.
And it's still far more profitable, both financially, obviously, but politically, to be an anti-Medicare for All congressperson. You know what I mean? Like to not stick your neck out for that until
Totally.
There's enough of a pressure game.
Totally. Yeah.
It feels like politically it's politically like you can't back down, which is what one of the big things about, you know, when you look at like the New Deal, like how that came together, like all of a sudden for politicians it was far more politically advantageous to support these programs. But until we get to a point like that, I don't think that we're necessarily going to get politicians on our side.
No, that's right. Like, I mean, I think with the New Deal, there was, I mean, in some ways that was the elect Bernie Sanders first strategy, that you could have the equivalent of what happened with FDR, because I mean, although that was also a little different because FDR wasn't originally elected as a New Deal Democrat, right?
Yeah, he was a very corporate friendly Democrat.
Yeah, when he was elected, like, you and I wouldn't have voted for him in that first election in 1932. But then, like, in the sort of pressure of, okay, what can we do about the Depression? Like, what's the move here? Then, like, he ended up becoming a New Deal Democrat, which is why, in 1936 there was that, it was such a clear victory, for that. And by the way, also, like, there's all this bullshit that's going around about for the last few years, is like a way of trying to discredit like Bernie Sanders kind of universalist, like redistributive policies, and said, oh, well, the New Deal was super racist. And, this is, like, so this is going to be like that. And like, I've never understood how people who believe that explain like the 1936 election, because the swing of black voters towards the Democratic Party in 1936 is like one of the greatest swings of any group in all of American history, because clearly a lot of, even with all of the horrible loopholes that were built in as compromises with Southern planters and everything, even with that, it was still like hugely economically benefiting, lots of ordinary working class black people. And that's why that happened.
I mean, I don't think that argument is meant in good faith to discredit the idea of universal policies. I think that argument is meant to handicap the left with using examples from history. You know what I mean? Like, historically speaking, I think it's all of a sudden like, well, here's this great example of how things worked. And I think that people that push that as like their main concern are kind of just trying to handicap that history away from us.
Yeah, no, for sure. Right. So anyway, the point is that, like, because FDR didn't really come in as what he became, which does happen sometimes, obviously, with him. And I think actually the other big example historically, this is kind of a weird example, most people would be surprised by it, is Hugo Chavez. When he was first elected, I mean, he wasn't really what he became either. Like, he was, he'd been anti, dictatorship before and whatever, but like, he was like pretty, like, he was like a relatively like third way kind of guy when he first came in, and he drifted to the left while he was in office, which is a very rare thing.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
It does happen every now and again. Like, I mean, I guess I should say in Chavez's case, like, pretty quickly, right? Because like, I think Hugo Chavez came in, if I'm getting this right, in '99, and like by 2002, he was like seen as enough of a threat to the status quo that's when that like first attempt at a coup happened.
Yeah.
So it was like pretty quickly, I guess, in both cases, but yeah, I mean, but when FDR did move more, to the left in that kind of semi-social democratic direction, like, that was kind of this, like, the way that played out is kind of what we were hoping for with Bernie Sanders becoming president, because this very popular president was like putting forward all these things, then there was like this way, like, first of all, a lot of Democrats who maybe weren't on board with that kind of politics before opportunistically got on board, and tons of new Democrats were elected, and they were elected as like Roosevelt Democrats. And the same way, it seemed like if Bernie Sanders was president, I mean, the best case scenario would be that the same thing would happen, that you'd get like that would lead to maybe nothing much would happen for the first 2 years, but the president going around the country using the presidential bully pulpit to say, like, to constantly harangue, bad Democrats about not supporting Medicare for all and all that stuff, could have, somebody points out in the chat, the entire mainstream press was against FDR in 36. He had no endorsements from any major paper. He still won by a landslide.
Yeah.
That would have led to a bunch of people being elected as like Bernie Democrats. And, of course, we'll never find out if it would have played out that way, but that was the hope. And so, of course, now that's been taken away from us, right? The Bernie Sanders shortcut has been taken away from us. So what we're left with is that it's going to happen. Like, it really looks like now it's going to have to happen the opposite direction. Not that we're going to like get to like pole vault to having a president, who's on our side, and then like use that to try to organize stuff below that, but that we're going to have to organize from the ground up and get.
And historically, that is how most progress has happened.
Yeah, like, that's right. Yeah,
reading like the Thomas Frank like History of Populism book, like the people know, like it's all local and state level victories, and all of a sudden you have like I didn't realize this. We're doing a documentary right now for Jacobin about with the Thomas Frank lecture, like we're cutting it like the same way we did with the Debs one, and looking into like he didn't even go into this in as much detail as I wish he did in the book, but like there were populist congressmen, populist senators, like, you know what I mean, like that kind of thing happens slowly once there is not that it has to be a third party movement, but people get into positions of power pretty quickly once you have kind of that leverage. But that's something that happens on a state level, and that's something that happens on a county level and on a local level, and piece by piece.
Yeah, no, that seems that seems right. So, I think like, the third party thing is like very. I think the third party thing is very tricky because, like, when it can happen, I mean, clearly it does sometimes, right? I mean, Bernie Sanders, was elected as an independent, and I mean, since he very quickly became sort of an independent, sort of a Democrat, because, like, since he was caucusing with the Democrats very quickly stopped running people against him.
There's also a big difference between running as an independent and running as a third party. Like, there's no institutional structure behind what Bernie Sanders did, which kind of. But of course, what would he have run as? Like Socialist Party USA or something? Like he wouldn't have necessarily gotten into that.
Well, he did. I mean, Bernie Sanders did run as a third party candidate like several times. He was there was the Liberty Union Party in Vermont, which is like a small socialist party, and he ran for like several offices as the Liberty Union candidate. I mean, he never like obviously won that way, but like, he did try it that way at first, before he was elected mayor, and then like sort of used that as the jumping off point, for finally.
The independent label can swing the other way too, because you have Angus King, who's the only other independent senator who's very popular in Maine, but is kind of more centrist than centrist Democrats on a lot of issues.
Yeah, right. And I mean, again, there are other cases. I guess, was it Jesse Ventura was elected governor of Minnesota as, I guess I'm not quite clear, was he just as an independent, or did he have some kind of third party affiliation?
Is he the Farmer Labor?
Well, the Farmer Labor Party was a third party in Minnesota back in but then like that actually merged with the Democrats in the I think by like the 40s or something, that had merged with the Democrats. So like now officially the Democrat, like what we would think of as the Democratic Party in Minnesota, is the Democratic Farmer Labor Party. But like before, like that had been that had been a third party before that. Like there were that was like a, like that was like one of the real third parties and like breakthroughs in American history, like back in the 30s.
Yeah.
And it was.
I guess he was just independent. He was just he didn't run.
Okay, he was just an independent. Yeah. So
before that, he was the Reform Party, which was the one that Trump ran on.
Yeah, that's right.
Try to keep Pat Buchanan out of office.
Yeah, no, that's right. That is the weirdest thing that people almost never bring up. That the current president of the United States also ran for the Reform Party nomination in 2000.
Yeah.
Like, that's so like that feels like a living in the Matrix detail. It's like, come on, guys, that's not plausible. Like that can't be right. But
I think he only ran in California too, or something like that. Like he wasn't like a nationwide. He ran to block California from Pat Buchanan or something like that.
There's actually a Christopher Hitchens column from the 2000 election where he talks like very briefly about the Buchanan, like the Buchanan-Trump primary, and he's like, I wish I remembered the exact line, but it's pretty good. It's like this is even here in like a third party, like the opposition between Buchanan and Trump is like a micros what we get in all of American politics. This is the only opposition we can get. That it's because it's something like because he was talking about how like Buchanan was this like establishment hack going back to like when he was in the Nixon administration. So it's like that you can get like the trusted beltway hack versus the narcissistic billionaire nut job. So
even in the tiniest party in the country, the Reform Party was like I don't know, it's just one of the most tremendous failures in like third party history too, because they did pretty well with Ross Perot. Well enough they could have created a wedge in between, at least in the Republican Party.
Yeah, I mean, Ross Perot did pretty well both times, 92 and 96, which is, in fact, because I believe Bill Clinton, for sure, 96. Yeah, I think both of those, right? Bill Clinton never actually got a majority. He just had a plurality because because the Reform Party was getting enough, that it was a three-way, it was a three-way split. Not that the Reform Party was ever in any danger, not that Perot was ever in any danger of winning or whatever.
But but still, I mean, sometimes it's not about winning. It's about influencing a party platform enough to kind of instill your will on them, or to get cabinet picks in, or whatever your ultimate goal is.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so somebody in chat mentions that Amazon is going to do an adaptation of The Culture, which for people who aren't familiar with that, that's it's a science fiction books by Ian Banks, the Culture books, which is kind of interesting, like to imagine what the Amazon version of that would be, because like those, like the society that's depicted in the Culture books is basically like fully automated luxury communism. So I don't, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, like even under the ultimate control of Bezos, sometimes left-wing things do sneak in. But
I think that it's kind of the like the Mark Fisher capitalist realism thing with Amazon doing things like this, because like when you actually on the surface level watch The Boys, it's kind of reform minded in the sense of like, or progressive minded in the sense that it's clear that like the Vought International kind of has like it's both like a Raytheon style defense company, but it's also like an Amazon style company. You know what I mean? Like they never quite make it clear what they're actually selling at the company. It seems like they're selling a little bit of everything on top of selling kind of the superhero branding. But then Amazon doesn't necessarily put their foot in it and say, oh, like this corporation's good. They just kind of use the kind of like grittiness of it to whittle away at the trust that progressive reforms can kind of fix any of this.
Fair enough.
Which is a big reason why AOC is going to be their main villain, I think, to show that even within like a system that claims that they're going to be reforming these things, like it's actually, with bad intention.
Right. Fair enough. So hey, I should probably get off. I'm going on David Feldman's show at 9, and in between, it's my turn to make dinner tonight. And I should say, by the way, because sometimes in the past, I think there were a couple times where I said it's my, at the end of a stream, it's my turn to make dinner tonight. I'm going to grill some burgers, and so there's like a running just, man, does Ben ever eat anything except for burgers? So make anything except for burgers when it's his turn to make dinner. So this is going to be like chicken jambalaya, totally different. But in any case, yeah, this is fun. I should say before we go that the next regular episode is going to be premiering on Monday at 7:30 as always. That's going to be Amber Frost and Slavoj Žižek, and then I think we're going to take a break for. We're not going to between on the 28th. Going to take the week between Christmas and New Year's off. Although there is the next Sopranos bonus episode with Nando and Waz and Mike Racine has been recorded, so I think we'll just put that out at the regular time that there would be an episode on the 28th, and then we're going to be back in business for regular episodes the first Monday of January, and this is as good a time as any to tell everybody this. So going to be a couple of changes then. So the big one is that instead of doing what we've been doing of which is recording the episodes over the weekend and having them edited and then putting them out, as premieres on Monday night, starting at the beginning of January, we're just going to do it. It turns out some of this stuff on StreamYard is not part of the thought. We're going to we're going to do them all live on Monday night, so sometimes live. And Forrest here, who's getting a lot of love in the chat, is going to be having a little bit more of an on-camera role, kind of analogous to, for people who watched, TMBS before Michael passed, the role that super producer Matt Leck was playing on that show. So that should be good.
I'm hyped, and I'm hyped that the first show that's happening after that, the guest is pretty big. I don't know if you've made that announcement about it, but what the hell? So the first when we switched to the live format for the first Monday of January, the first guest on the new format is going to be Professor Richard Wolff. So that should be a lot of fun. I was really like talking to him. Other there's other good stuff coming up later in January. Michael Albert, I already mentioned. Going to have Anna Kasparian back. Going to do, and I should also say that since the fact that we're going to start recording, we're going to start doing the episodes for every Monday night. So that takes away what was one of the major patron benefits, which is early access to the shows. So to make up for that, we're going to start doing bonus, like weekly bonus episodes, not as long as the regular episodes, but weekly bonus episodes, like equivalent to Dead Pundit Society B-sides or TMBS post games. Probably call it something like cheesy, like Give Them More or something, Give Them More argument. I don't know. But it'd be cool to do the John Carpenter thing as like a bonus thing too, maybe.
Yeah. No, that'd be fun. Yeah, I like that. So we'll be doing that. And of course, already, patrons, patrons get and will continue to get, of course, the access to the Discord, and been doing Discord office hours, group voice chats with patrons a few times a month, and other good stuff coming up. Plus, again, if you like the work we do here, want to support it, want to help me pay poor Forrest here a living wage, then please please become a patron, and that's that's $5 a month. If you can swing it, get those bonus, can watch us record live this Saturday with Zizek and Amber, and then in the future when the regular shows are live, get those patron bonus episodes and Discord office hours and all that stuff. So good stuff. If you cannot swing the $5 a month, trust me, I've been there. Then do certainly like and subscribe here on YouTube. Happy to say we did make it over that 10,000 subscribers threshold, so that's a good.
Nice.
Yeah,
I saw you tweeting last night that we were almost there.
Yep, we made it. So we're a little over, like, I think actually right now it's like maybe like 1,100 or something. So we made it over that threshold. Like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review where you get podcasts. All of those things definitely help. And so I will see people. There's enough stuff going on with family being here over the holidays and stuff that I don't think we're going to do another live stream before the Zizek and Amber Frost episode comes out on Monday. But we are going to do at least one live stream next week. Because as was mentioned at the top, for anybody who wasn't here when we started this, the Scorsese series is continuing. We are going to be doing. We're going to be doing Goodfellas next Wednesday. So
that should be really fun. I'm excited for that.
Yeah. I watched it last night because at that point we still thought that we might be doing it today. So it's again, it's like I said about Casino or Apocalypse Now. Actually, all three of these are movies where this is true. Like that these are things that I must have seen at least 500 times in my 20s, but like I haven't really seen since then. So
Goodfellas is the first one I've seen like that, like, you know what I mean, like probably like a dozen times. Like Casino I've watched probably like 5, I mean, altogether, including the rewatch that I did. But yeah, Goodfellas is the one that, like, even on airplanes I've rented it. And
yeah. I actually did watch Goodfellas on an airplane once. That's true. That wasn't that many years ago. But yeah, no, it's so, yeah, it's such a good movie. It really holds up. But no, we'll definitely do Raging Bull at some point. I'm not sure when. We were talking about it. We were talking about doing it for today because we're putting off Goodfellas for next week because we're doing Goodfellas next week.
Yeah, we didn't have enough time for that.
Because Bester is going to be able to join us next week, and possibly also Micah Utrecht. Not sure about that yet. Neither of them we're going to be able to do it today. But so we were talking about Raging Bull, but like it's like there's no way I had time to watch Raging Bull again before our stream today. But and that one actually, weirdly enough, I've only ever seen once. So that'll be much fresher. So yeah, we'll do Raging Bull after Goodfellas. Let's say that.
All right.
But yeah, Goodfellas on Wednesday, just before, so that's on the 23rd. So kind of just before, all of this stuff, all of the everybody that Jimmy Dore meant by everyone goes on break for a little bit, for the holidays. And then
everyone's going on break. Me, Kyle Kalinske.
Yeah, everyone, the entire world. Well, Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball, and it's like that's you just listed off like 5 lefty podcast YouTube people, and again, some of them I really like, but like, that's
it's more people than are in the squad.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. That's true. Which should tell us something. Yeah, that's a pretty narrow definition of everybody. It's like when I remember when in what was it, like late last year maybe, or the beginning of this year, Hillary Clinton said that nobody likes Bernie Sanders. And I actually did I did an article about this for Arc Digital Media where I was pointing out it's like taken literally. This is such a weird statement because it's like, come on, the guy won 22 states when he was running against you. What do you mean nobody likes him? Yeah, it's like, well, what she means is that nobody at like
lifelong career as politicians.
Yeah, exactly. That's her nobody. Is
Walmart that she was on. None of them liked Bernie Sanders. Like,
yeah. Nobody
at Raytheon. None of them.
Yeah, exactly. None of the people who matter. Exactly. All right. So yep. Episodes coming out on Monday. Goodfellas stream on Wednesday. Short break after that. But lots and lots of good stuff coming up. Thank you for everybody for showing up, for doing the super chats, for watching us shoot the shit for the last couple hours. It was fun. So I will see.
Nice use of a snow day.
What's that?
It's a nice use of a snow day.
Yeah. It's actually pretty. I should post something of. Actually, here I'll do this real quick before we get off the stream. Let me see if I can find it, and if so, I'll do a screen share and show it. So let's see, what day is it today? It's Thursday, so this was 5th, so that'll be Tuesday. Here we go. I found it. All right, let me just bring this up. Screen share, Chrome tab. Yep. All right, so this is just a so this is a video that my wife took of what it looks like right outside our house right now.
Man, I gotta tweet a video or a picture of what's going on outside mine right now. The snow is up to I have this little porch thing, this little deck, and the snow is up to the little deck. It's crazy in New York right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So not that we own the house, but the house we're staying at. It's yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy like how snowy it looks right now.
Yeah.
So this would for sure be a, if I ever went anywhere, which obviously I don't, because half of my life is on YouTube and also there's a pandemic. So, I'm not going anywhere, but if I went anywhere, it would definitely be a snow day.
Yeah. So I feel like with climate change and all that, they're happening less and less. So then there's always that one big snowstorm that happens at the beginning of the season, and it's like after that you can never tell what it's going to be like for the rest of it.
Exactly. All right. Thanks, Forrest. Thank you, everybody, for watching. A lot of fun, as always. Left is best.